pulley is a mechanism that utilizes mechanical advantage in order to reduce the amount of work needed in order to lift something. The Latin American Youth Center is the pulley that lifts underprivileged and challenged adolescents throughout the greater Washington, D.C. area. I'm Jimmy Winsel, this is AJ Johnson, Alex Petrov, and Shabir Javaji. And today, we are going to go over the key issues presented in the case, talk about which recommendations we've come up with, and then go ahead and tell you what the outcomes we expect if you implement our recommendations will be. Your organization is doing something really spectacular. It's going and helping through its various programs, youth, at their home life, educationally, and through professional development, and you're really making an impact on these youth's lives. If you look at this bottom graphic, you'll see that our revenues are completely dependent on donations through government, foundation, and personal contributions. And it's important to understand that the economic conditions drive these donations. So in times of economic turmoil, these donations and these funds could disappear. If you look at the upper right-hand corner of our slide, you'll see that Washington, D.C. high school graduation rates are still far below the national average. And while our organization looks to combat this, we still have a lot of work to go. We've identified 3 overarching issues in the case, the first of which is a need to figure out how we're going to sell our positive youth development replication system, how we're going to find new ways to bring in unrestricted revenues, and how we're going to put a structure to our volunteer system in order to increase participation and increase retention of our current volunteers. If you look at this graphic, you'll see that our organization falls in the very top 5% of nonprofits in terms of size, which means that we have the ability to impact that many more lives, and which is exactly why we have to solve these issues.
Thank you, Jimmy. Let's jump into the first issue. When looking at ways to sell the positive youth development curriculum, we narrowed our options down to 4. From there to find a final strategy, we looked at 4 criteria: the potential in revenue, costs, impact, and market size. From there, we chose to go with a customized curriculum. We decided that this was both our strongest, our greatest strength and our greatest opportunity. This is a best practice replication unit. And because of that, it is a good opportunity to help other nonprofit organizations follow with their mission. But not only that, it creates a new source of revenue so that we can get off of government grants, and it also gathers valuable data, which we appreciate here. So we decided that if we're gonna sell the PYD curriculum, we wanted to package it with our team's ability to gather and analyze data, and then also to customize the curriculum so that it fits an organization's culture, or rather, salsa, as you can see. So the program would take approximately 4 weeks, or at least initially, and the price is gonna start at $15,000. The demand comes from existing interest. We've had people and organizations come up to us and talk about things they like and strategy that they like that we're doing now, that they would like to implement. Secondly, DC and Maryland youth nonprofit organizations. There's 1,100 organizations in this area, and we want to help these because they're close to home, and it would really fall into our mission statement. And then finally, school districts and anywhere with at-risk youth demographics. We want to be there. We want to be working with the youth. We want to be improving society wherever we can, because that's what we care about. So the impacts that this program is going to have on our company is we're going to gather very valuable, unique data. Secondly, it is a good source of revenue, and it's going to get us away from that government grant dependency. It's in our mission statement, so we do care about that a lot. And finally, since it is a best practice replication unit, it will open up the outlets for future best practice replication units to expand and maybe bring in more revenue as we go along.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now, Alex is completely correct. We need to reduce our dependence on grants. And the way that we're going to do that is following the trends. In 2014, individual donations reach an all-time high. And we need to follow these trends specifically because doing this is going to be a way that we not only bring in more revenue, but engage with our community. Now, when looking specifically about the ways that, that donations work, sustainable funding is very popular right now through a subscription model. It's working with other companies in this industry, and it's something that we need to do as an organization. Now, fortunately, we're already doing it, but we're not doing it entirely correctly. We need to think about what we can do for our donors because they want to help these kids as well. And that's their main priority. So we need to be showcasing the kids at every opportunity. Now, something that we came across is the creative potential of these children. And I know that if donors were seeing how wonderful and special these children truly are, then they would be donating as much as they can and as often as they can. Now, the way that we've developed our creative potential in these kids is through the Art and Media House of this organization, which is a place that kids learn skills such as creative writing, poetry, spoken word, music, all sorts of fine arts skills. There's an immense amount of talent within this organization. Now, the other main issue is you cannot separate the stories of these kids' educational development from the creative development that these kids have had. You cannot tell the story of Calvin Jackson and his educational development without telling his experience learning spoken word and his own culture. You cannot tell the story of Annabelle Pereira without telling her artistic development. That's who these kids are. It's not just about the statistics. It's about the greater issue of who these kids are. This is a drawing that we found particularly moving from one of these children. It illustrates them leaving their homes, represented by the flags of these South American nations, and moving towards the path to success in the United States. Now, the way that we'll interact with these donors is also crucial. We need to send personalized and individualized thank you notes with every donation with some aspect of media that these kids have produced. These donors want to see what these kids are doing, not only in the classroom, but what their lives are truly like. And this is a way for us to do that. And the impact of this will be, we will get more subscribers through this model. And through more subscribers, we'll have a more consistent and more predictable revenue stream. Not only will that occur, but we'll have greater diversity among our donation sources.
Thank you, AJ. As unsystemized as our volunteer model is, we do have a great mission and a vision statement that can be expanded through our volunteer program. We also have a bad infrastructure right now, but we do have good things going for us, such as our application program, and also our volunteers have a position in the company right now. Also, we can take advantage of our ETO software to keep track of the impact and what the volunteers are doing for the organization. So what we did is we came up with the Latin American Youth Heroes program. What this program does is it takes into effect the episodic volunteer who comes in once in a while, but also takes into account the volunteers who want to be there for the long run. So if you work there for 15 hours, you become a certified volunteer. But if you stay there for 40 hours, you become a Latin American youth superhero, where you reach a supervisory level where you can also start organizing, managing teams. Another great tool for nonprofits is LinkedIn. What LinkedIn does is it's created a platform for volunteers and nonprofits to connect to one another. What this does is the LAYC and the volunteers are connected, allowing them to share their stories with their friends and making it easier for people to know what the LAYC is doing for Washington, D.C. Another thing is Pinterest. Pinterest is a great, powerful storytelling tool. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation uses it, the American Red Cross uses it. What it does is it shows the impact that the LAYC is having on society by uploading photos and videos, showing the impact that you're having, creating a more vast donor base. Social media is vital for nonprofit success. What it does is it connects donors, volunteers, and employers all into one platform, making it easier for us to connect one another and see what we're doing. The importance of social media, we understood it, so we came up with the photo of the day concept, where every day we post a photo showing what we're doing with the donors' money and showing what the volunteers are doing, making the community and
Thank you, team, and good morning. Actually, good afternoon. You talked about a lot about multiple areas that you could gain funding through social media. If you were to pick one point of focus, where would that be?
in terms of like which social media like group would we use?
Exactly. Where would be your most effective?
LinkedIn would definitely be our most effective route. LinkedIn has an entire platform that's created for nonprofits and volunteers to connect. And also it has this thing called an advanced search option. Many nonprofits have trouble of finding skilled volunteers. What this does is when a skilled individual wants to volunteer his time, it puts them into the LinkedIn profile database, and then nonprofits can go on the nonprofits part of LinkedIn, and they could see which skilled individuals want to spend their time volunteering there, getting rid of that obstacle that's usually pretty hard to find. And also there's more than 4 million people on LinkedIn looking to volunteer, making it a lot easier for us to find volunteers in the DC area.
Thank you.
He can actually talk for about 30 minutes on LinkedIn and how useful it will be.
So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how you guys came up with the $15,000 cost of the PYD program, and then if you could speak a little bit more about if that's per organization and regardless of the number of individuals, that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. Can you go to the slide on the sensitivity analysis we did on the revenue? So first and foremost, when we were thinking about how much are we going to charge for this service, we thought about our costs. We thought about our variable costs as far as food and supplies go, which are about $2,500 per cohort. And if you remember back to our personal youth development model, we aren't just going in at one cohort. We're going in, delivering the basic PYPD model. We're understanding their analytics. We're running it through our ETO analysis. And then we're going back and we're delivering a second cohort and tailoring it to their salsa. So we'd figured that the cost of that would be about doubled for the variable costs, and then taking into account the salaries of the employees and the teams that would have to be going through these organizations, we had to pad in a little profit margin for ourselves. So if you see here, we thought about several different price points, and we thought about how many different customers we were possibly going to attain per year. And although we understand that many nonprofits are strapped on cash and hearing a $15,000 expenditure could be vast to some of them, there are plenty of other nonprofit organizations in that top 5%, just like ourselves, that do have $15,000 to spare if it's going to dramatically affect the impact that it's going to have on their youth development.
I'm curious, did you guys look at costs of similar programs that are offered by other organizations in the area and how this would be in line with the market?
Yeah, we looked at, in the case it outlined DC Trust, but we didn't really feel like they were a direct competitor, and we couldn't find an organization out there that was delivering any type of service that was exactly matching the model that we were producing. So the answer to your question is no.
This is just more of a point of clarification. So on one of the slides, when you were talking about demand for the customized training, you mentioned that part of the demand is school districts. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I didn't understand the connection with the school districts.
Right. So this is something we talked about a little bit, and it's that in any school district, if we want to work with schools, for example, the school administrator or supervisor would bring us in and maybe train a couple teachers to help work with their youth. And that wouldn't be the same as pairing with the university or anything. It'd be more like something we could do down the road if we wanted to find more demand.
And actually with the school districts, our prime motivation for putting that up there was for aftercare programs, because we think that these teachers that have gone through secondary education to be able to become a teacher already have a lot of the skills that our personal youth development program would have. But a lot of the aftercare counselors are teenagers, are young 20-year-olds that have not received any type of this training. And we see that especially in aftercare programs when you're dealing with children whose parents might not be there for them, and that's why they're in an aftercare program like this, that an organization like that could really benefit.
You talked about getting off and reducing the amount of reliance on government grants that you were there. How are you going to continue that? Because that is a significant source of revenue, and if you do focus on that, what's the long term for that?
Can we bring up the slide that has our profit?
Just to clarify your question, were you asking why we're saying we need to stop the reliance on government grants? And I don't think what we were saying is we should not collect the government grants. I believe that we should collect as many government grants as we possibly can get our hands on, but we can't become reliant upon those, because if economic conditions turn south and the government has to reallocate their budget and can no longer give us those grants, we're looking to augment that with a unrestricted revenue stream.
That was exactly the question, because as I heard it, I thought you were saying you're going to reduce the reliance on government grants. Therefore, I was thinking you would have a potential drop in income, and looking at the supplement to come up there, it would be difficult to climb back up that hill. So actually, in that response, you answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, why only LinkedIn and Pinterest? I see you have Instagram up there. Why not just use all social media outlets
Could you go to the
that are out there?
We do want to use all the social media outlets. The LAYC is already on all the social media outlets besides Pinterest. That's the only one it's not on. The only thing we found about them on LinkedIn is that when you go on their nonprofit segment of it and you type in LAYC, there no volunteer opportunities come up. So they already have a good basis of social media. We just want to revamp that. We want to show that the more social media is used, the more outreach we can find in the community, and the more people, the more easier it is for us to find donors, volunteers, more people, for the community to have a knowledge of what we're doing in the area.
To tag on to that, the social medias that we are using, they have accounts, but there's a lot of opportunity to grow that, because they're definitely not utilizing it enough.
Which is why we came up with the photo of the day concept, where every single day, if there's a photo being uploaded, it keeps the volunteers intrigued, and it also keeps us on track for our mission.
And just to give you an example using Instagram about how underutilized these social medias are, the LAYC Instagram page, I believe, has 171 followers. And I don't know if you have an Instagram page personally, but if you do, I assume that you could get more followers than that in a matter of weeks or two. I'm sure everybody in this room has more followers than that. And we think the way to improve that is to do a photo of the day and to increase the awareness throughout the community.
Good answer. One more. Can I do one more? Can you go back to the curriculum, the Latin American superhero concept? Right. I think that's it. Well,
That's a couple
The
down.
volunteer program. Superman.
Well, my question is, okay, so these are tiers of, I guess they're tiers that a potential volunteer can choose to go on. So I guess they can do only 15 hours and then become a certified volunteer. Is that what we're saying with the slide?
Yes.
Okay, and then after 40 hours, they become the Latin American superhero. What sort of incentive is there to do the full, are you planning on creating incentive to do the full 40 hours?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a dual incentive. One, for our organization, it's we're giving them this title, and we're gaining volunteers that have retention, that are constantly coming back. And for the volunteer, what they're doing is at the first level, when they become a hero, they're getting some sort of certification as a volunteer. On a resume, this is a little bit higher of a step than just saying they volunteered. And then after they receive the superhero designation, now they're organizing and managing teams. For a volunteer that's looking to bolster its resume, can be seen as management experience and could be very valuable to them, we think.
And I think it's more than just bolstering a resume. I think, as a Latin American youth superhero, they have more responsibility and they'll be able to touch more lives. They'll be able to do things that are more important for this organization. And there's an intrinsic need among our volunteers to want to do that.
So I believe, based on the revenue projections that you guys had up earlier, it looked like there were about it would take about 4 organizations to get to the $60,000. So I'm curious to hear how, your thoughts around what level of staff support would be required to actually convert potential customers into true customers.
Yeah, certainly. So if you look at year 2016, year to date, we're assuming that we're going to be able to pull in 4 customers, which would be one client per quarter, very reasonable. And if you see under the incremental costs here, for the first year, we include no additional salary expense. Our thoughts behind this is that we already have a team running the Positive Youth Development Program. I believe it was 3 to 5 as a minimum employees doing that. And while there is a dramatic need for them to be doing their services in our programs, we thought that as a pilot, just to test out to see if this would be effective replicating to other units, we would be able, during that first year, to use our current employees. And as you see, the PYD salary expense gradually increase as we would hopefully take on more customers.
And that would be as a result of hiring additional staff to support more of a sales function?
Yeah, exactly. Because we're assuming that our staff that we're hiring could not only have the sales component, but also be delivering the curriculum to our clients. So if you see here, we assumed a $25,000 annual salary for a nonprofit worker. During the first 2 years, where we're assuming we're going to be able to work with about 12 and 18 clients, an additional 2 workers would be, in addition to the PYD team that we already have, would be able to do that 1 a month quota. And then as hopefully demand for those services rises, and hopefully as we geographically expand, we would be able to increase that salary.
In reviewing the case materials, I thought one interesting aspect was that the organization is very good at analyzing data to prove out outcomes. And you're also talking about, and you mentioned that in the beginning, and you also mentioned they're good at this training. But I didn't really hear you guys talk about, or the previous group talk about, how maybe those 2 strengths can be combined in a service. I would think that you're going in and you're training people in another organization, maybe they would also want to know or find out about the effectiveness of that training. Did you guys give any consideration to combining that as part of your service?
Yeah, I think we touched on that in the conclusion a little bit, even when we said that we're going to gather qualitative and quantitative data. And a lot of that's going to be analyzed. So, yeah. So, as you can see, we talk about efforts to outcome here. And so kind of how it works is they do the first cohort, and then they gather data on what the results are, the outcomes, if it's positive, negative, what parts work, what parts don't. And they use their software to help determine what could be improved. And so it kind of is combined now, to answer.
So you'll be providing that as part of your client services, or no?
Yes, we will do the analyzing the data for them.
Yeah, and
it'll be a service more than a licensing.
Just to clarify a little bit, I think we touched on it briefly. I know we've been hitting you guys with a lot of information here, but we're coming in 2 cohorts. So the first one is going off our core competency of being able to deliver this excellent curriculum that we've developed and just as is, as we've developed it. And then that 2-week period, we're analyzing the outcomes of that. So we are using our other core competency of the efforts to outcomes ETO software. And then we're going back in and we're revamping and tailoring, adding a little spice to that curriculum and delivering a second cohort just to augment that curriculum.
Thank you very much. You now have 5 minutes for your concluding remarks.
Get over here. So I'm just going to read you guys the mission statement of our organization. We believe in the future where all youth pursue their dreams, reach their goals, and acquire the skills and self-confidence to live a life of purpose, connection, contribution, and joy. The Latin American Youth Center does far more than just sell products or sell services. They really change human beings' lives here. And if you guys would just take a look at the quote at the bottom of the screen, I believe many of you are going to be familiar with it. It's from one of our former presidents, Abraham Lincoln. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And I think standing here today in our nation's capital, this is true more than ever. Recently in our nation, income disparity, social injustice, racial inequality, and general inequality has really been tearing this nation apart from its inner seams. And I think that falls on all of our shoulders to make sure that for generations to come, regardless of whatever situation a child is born into, that they're going to receive the support and receive the help to have a chance in the world. And that's really why it's so important that we go ahead and tackle the issues that we've identified with our organization today.
You gave us 3 key issues to analyze in this case. We believe them to be the replication of the PYD model, the diversification of the revenue stream, and volunteer retention and structure. And we believe that we've solved all of these through our analysis. Our Positive Youth Development Program will not only help us engage the community and the people that are in the DC area and beyond, but it will also help us diversify our revenue stream as well. We'll also diversify our revenue stream through engaging with our contributors directly through the art and media projects and customized thank you notes in the subscription model. We'll engage the community as well with the LAYC Superheroes by helping with our issue of volunteer retention and structure. We want to make sure that going forward, we are capable of having large events staffed by volunteers and having capable volunteers on our hands for every event.
Now, this begs the question, how do we measure our impact? And I don't want to talk about dollar signs. We've gone through questions about cost. We've gone through questions about revenue. I want to talk about impact of the youth. I want to talk about how does our organization touch more lives and touch them in a more meaningful way. And I think the answer to that question has a qualitative component as well as a quantitative one. And I think that impact measurement comes from the feedback we get from the organizations that go through our positive youth development programs. I think that impact is measured from the feedback we're getting from our volunteers, telling us about how they're incentivized to return to volunteering and to continue to give of themselves. I think that measurement is found in the happiness of our subscription donors and the willingness for them to continue their donations in the future. And if you take a step back and look at it quantitatively, I think if you take a look at our ETO software efforts to outcome, you're going to be able to find the data, you're going to be able to run the analysis on the organizations we're going out and helping, and I think you're going to find higher test scores educationally. I think you're going to find higher rates of employment. I think you're going to find much better professional development. Additionally, you're going to see higher numbers of total volunteers and a higher retention rate of those volunteers, as well as an increase in unrestricted revenue streams from donations. And I think I can speak for all of us here just to say that it was an absolute privilege to work on this case. We really felt a serious connection with this organization, and we think that you guys are doing a truly great thing. We just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. That's all.